Hey guys, Foxdrop here. Today we'll be doing a video taking a look at the best junglers for carrying in solo queue in the current patch 7.8. In the background, I'll be using footage mostly taken from my videos, not only as a kind of proof that these champions are pretty good, because if I can do well on them, then you certainly can, but also because if you want to see some more information about these guys, all of these gameplays kind of serve as like a mini guide. I'm explaining what I'm doing to give you some more information. You can go check them out. I'll put links to them down below in the description. I actually struggled to make this list because there are quite a few junglers now who could deserve to be put in the top 5, and I'm probably going to piss some people off with my selections here, so let's get right into it, and I can't wait to read the annual comments down below. So for the first jungler on this list, I'm going to chuck in the most popular jungler probably of all time, Lee Sin. Lee Sin is not only my favourite jungler to play, but apparently he's everyone else's favourite jungler to play as well. He's consistently had the highest pick rate pretty much of any champion in the game. Almost 50% of games, you'll see a Lee Sin jungle. What makes him really good is his ability to win the game flat out right off the bat from the early game, and also, not to be underestimated, is his level 6 power spike. His ganks become really strong once he hits level 6, and also his 1v1s transition into something where he has quite a few losing matchups into where he has quite a few winning matchups. Outside of that, he's also quite a good versatile champion. You can play him with a bit more damage to feel more of an assassin role, more of a high threat person, but you can also build him pretty much just full tank and then soak up damage, soak up cooldowns from the enemy team, act as like a shield bot for your AD carry, a peeler with your kick, or even displacing the enemy team with your kick. Essentially with Lee Sin, you're not pigeonholed into just one style. You can adapt to different things depending on what the game might need of you. However, I do want to emphasize that you have to be quite good on Lee Sin to make him work. I would not recommend you actually pick up Lee Sin if you're in the lower leagues. However, having said that, we're going to be moving on to a few champions here who I absolutely would recommend that you pick in low elo. In fact, I think they are some of the best low elo champions in the game. Specifically, and this will move us on to the second champion on this list, Warwick. I've been playing a lot of Warwick myself. I think he's a really good, like, chilled out jungler. You don't have to think about things too much when you play Warwick. He's really simple mechanically. He's hard to muck up on because he's just so bloody tanky later on. And he's one of these champions you can just farm up on in the early game and then just become a bit of a unstoppable force and a movable object. Both of them all wrapped up into one delicious little package. Having said that, Warwick's early game isn't quite of the same caliber that Lee Sin's is, for example. Yeah, he can get some stuff done and he's actually pretty strong in the 1v1, but he can't really exert the same amount of pressure. Essentially, Warwick doesn't create the plays himself. If he's around when a play opens up, he can certainly take advantage of it, but not really the same kind of early game playmaker that you might expect from some other champions. Still, what he lacks in early game pressure, he more than makes up with in the mid game once he unlocks his ultimate, and transitioning into the late game when he becomes unkillable. If you enjoyed a bit more of a slow-paced early game, but then also someone who can be ridiculously tanky when it comes to it later on, definitely recommend Warwick for you. The third champion on this list, and someone who's also very good in the lower elos, Xin Zhao. Xin's one of the champions who's a bit more focused on the dueling aspect of jungling, quite good in the early game with his ganking as well, rather than being one of these slower paced early game tanky champions like Warwick. Xin's kit is extremely simple and really effective for making ganks happen in that early game. Essentially, he has the holy trinity of what you want for ganking. He has a gap closer, he has a crap ton of damage, and he also has a bit of CC to top it all off with. On the other hand, Xin's clear speeds, especially against AoE camps, are quite slow, which makes him quite a weak farmer. If he were around in this day and age, he could just get subsidies from the government, but sadly, this means that he has to focus a lot more on snowballing to be effective. As the game transitions into the mid and late game, Xin becomes much more of a heck you squishy kind of champion rather than anything else. Essentially, he just jumps in against the squishies on the backline, whether that's the AD carry, whether it's the enemy mid laner, and by design, if he's on you, it's extremely hard to get him off of you before you die. However, you do have to make sure you're not just jumping in and dying instantly. If you go in first, that does tend to happen, especially considering you tend to build quite squishy on Xin as well, especially with the first few items. Either way, moving on to the fourth champion on this list, Elise. Elise has always been the go-to champion for most high elo EU West solo queue junglers. What Elise brings to the table that makes her so coveted, especially in the higher elo, is such a strong and unmatched early game. So essentially you pick Elise and you know you're going to have a stronger early game, and in higher elo this works really well because you can work with your teammates to really make the most of that strong early game. What is worth noting as well though is that Elise does tend to fall off a little bit the later the game goes on. And in higher elo this isn't such a big deal because you know that if you've got your team an advantage, they can then take over from that point and they can carry. In lower elo this can be seen as a bit more of a flaw because you're not sure whether or not your teammates will be able to carry, but still if you get enough advantages in the early game, you'll probably win regardless. And before we move on to the last champion for this list, just want to say thanks so much for checking the video out today. I hope you are enjoying it. If you are, of course, do hit that cheeky thumbs up, and you can subscribe to me for more League of Legends content. But most importantly, thanks so much for checking the video out so far, and without any further ado, the last champion on this list, it is the bushy green father himself, Ivern. I was a little bit hesitant to put Ivern on this list because he's been up there, like really up there for the whole season. But in lower elo, he's not quite the same powerhouse as he is in high elo. You play a lot more of a supporty style on Ivern, and that might not tickle your fancy, especially if you're in lower elo, because you can't really hard carry with that. But essentially, just think of what Nunu does to champions. Ivern does that to people, but 10 times worse. He makes the enemy jungler so weak, and I can tell you, if you are a jungle main and you play versus Ivern, it is not fun whatsoever. And then late the game goes on, you just become a really strong support. But there's not really too much to say about Ivern. If you prefer a bit more of a laid back style, someone who's still really good in the early game, but doesn't necessarily have to be good in the early game. And also if you're someone who struggles to carry hard from the jungle role, Ivern can allow your teammates to carry while also being useful. But anyway, thanks so much for watching the video, boys and girls. I hope you liked it. Don't forget to check out the videos down below if you want to see more information about these champions and how to actually play them. But yeah, have a good evening, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.